The snow came sideways off the Scarra that night, and I was dying in it, and I could not even lift my head to see the thing that would kill me. I had been a king 3 hours before. Now I was a shape in the drift, and the cold had gone all the way into the marrow of me, and the only warm thing left in the world was the weight of my wolves as they pressed their bodies down over mine. 9 of them. That was all that was left. 3 days before, I had ridden out from Vasshold with 200 spears and 40 of the Ironpine wolves at my flank, and I had believed, Moon forgive me the arrogance, that I would come home before the first hard snow. We were to hold the Greywater fords against the raiders out of the eastern reaches, and Certain of the Blackmoor had sworn his shield wall to mine. Sworn it on the old iron, sworn it before both our packs. He broke and ran when the second horn sounded. He took his line and his horses and left my flank bare to the river, and by the time I understood what he had done, half my men were in the water and the ice was red, and there was no line left to hold. I do not blame the raiders. Raiders do what raiders do. I blame the man who smiled at my fire the night before and let me believe I was not alone. We came apart at the fords. What was left of us ran for the high country, because the high country in winter is a door that only the desperate will walk through, and I gambled that the raiders would not follow us into the teeth of the Scarra. I was right. They did not follow. The mountain did not need their help. By the second night on the pass I had lost the last of my spears, good men, frozen where they sat when they stopped to rest, and it was only me and the wolves. By the third night I had lost the road. There is a place on the Scarra above the tree line where the world simply stops being a world, where the snow and the sky are one white nothing and a man cannot tell up from down, and I walked into that nothing and it took me. I remember going down. I remember the snow coming up to meet me almost gently, the way a bed does. I remember thinking, with the strange clear calm of a man who has finished being afraid, that no one would ever find the Alpha King of the Ironpine, that Vasshold would wait through the spring for a king who would not come, that Certain would tell whatever story he pleased about the fords, and there would be no one left to call him a liar. And then I remember the wolves lying down on top of me. They did not have to do that. A wolf's first law is its own life. Any creature with sense would have curled nose to tail in the lee of a rock and let the man freeze. But my pack lay down over me in the drift, layer upon layer of them, Grail and Old Sten, and the young one I had never gotten around to naming, pressing their living warmth into me and taking the wind on their own backs, and I felt the snow build up over all of us until the sound of the storm went far away, and there was only the dark and the smell of wet fur and my own slow heart. I want you to understand what they did, because it is the whole beginning of everything. They did not lie down over their king to keep him warm. My wolves and I are bound, the way an alpha and his pack are always bound, and a wolf can feel the pull of a thing its alpha needs before the alpha knows he needs it. They were not sheltering me where I fell. They were carrying me toward something. In the last of my strength, before the dark took me down, I felt them all straining in one direction through the storm, hauling my dead weight a hand's breadth at a time across the snow, toward a smell on the wind that meant nothing to me and everything to them. Wood smoke, and under it, so faint I would not have caught it awake, a scent I had never known and had somehow been waiting my whole life to find. Then the dark closed over, and I was gone. I did not wake when she found us. I have only her account of it, given to me later in pieces on winter nights, and I have built the rest from the tracks and the cold logic of what must have been. But I have thought about it so many times that it lives in me now as if I had watched it with my own eyes. There is a beacon on the Scarra, a cairn of black stone above the tree line, taller than a man, with an iron basket at its crown, and it is lit through the deep months so that anyone lost on the pass has one true thing to steer by in all that white nothing. It is an old kindness, older than my grandfather's grandfather, and by ancient custom the packs of the valley take it in turn to send someone up to keep the light. It is the worst duty there is. Months alone above the world, in a stone bothy with the wind for company, hauling would you cut in autumn and dreading the day it runs low. No pack sends a person it values to the beacon. A pack sends the one it will not miss. Sunova's pack sent Sunova. She was 23 that winter and she had kept the beacon 4 winters running, which tells you everything about how her people saw her. She was born the wrong daughter to the wrong house, no wolf of her own, which in the valley marks a woman as broken before she has done a single thing, motherless young, raised on the charity of an aunt who counted every mouthful she ate. When the beacon lot came round, her house put her name in it every year without fail, and every year the lot fell to her, because a lot always falls to the one everyone in the room is quietly praying it will fall to. She did not argue. She had learned long ago that arguing only made them enjoy it. So she was up there alone that night the storm came, and she saw through the shutter gap that her fire was guttering low, and a lesser soul would have banked it and slept and let the night take whatever the night wanted. But Sunova had a rule, and she kept her rules the way other people keep their pride. Her rule was that the light did not go dark on her watch. Not for cold, not for weariness, not for anything. Someone might be out there. Someone was always in her mind out there. She wrapped herself in every skin she owned, and she went out into the storm to feed the beacon. And that is when she heard the sound. Not a howl. A wolf does not howl when it is dying of cold. It saves its breath. What she heard, she told me, was a kind of low, broken keening, one thin thread of it through the wind, coming from a place where there should have been nothing but drift. She could have told herself it was the wind. People tell themselves that all the time. It is how they keep their hands clean. Sunova went toward the sound. She found a mound in the snow that was not a rock, because it was breathing. She dug, with her hands, and then with the flat wooden shovel she kept for clearing the beacon steps, she dug down into that mound in the dark and the killing wind, and the first thing her hands found was fur. She thought at first she had stumbled onto a whole pack of wolves gone to ground, and she nearly ran, because a starving pack in a hard winter is death. But these wolves did not move to defend themselves. These wolves barely moved at all. She pulled the first one out of the drift. It was a great gray brute, heavier than she was, and she got her arms under its shoulders and hauled it clear onto the packed snow, and it lifted its head a hand's width and looked at her and did not so much as show a tooth. She pulled the second one out from beside it. Then a third, a fourth, dragging each one clear and laying it down, and every one of them alive, and every one of them looking at her with that same terrible patience, as if they had been waiting for her, as if she were exactly the thing they had crawled through the storm to find. She did not stop. I have thought about that more than anything else, that a woman half frozen herself, a woman her whole world had taught to save nothing and expect nothing, knelt in a blizzard on the roof of the mountain and pulled 9 wolves out of the snow one by one, because they were alive and she could reach them, and that was reason enough. And when she had pulled the 9th one clear, she saw that they had been lying over something. That underneath where they had lain, packed into the snow at the very bottom of that mound, there was a shape that was not a wolf. There was a man. She did not know I was a king. There was nothing on me to say it. A king in flight looks like any other frozen wretch. The crown had gone into the gray water with everything else, and the cloak I wore was borrowed off a dead man's back 3 passes ago. She saw a big man, blue-lipped, snow packed into his beard, so far gone that when she pressed her fingers to my throat she was sure she was pressing them to a corpse. She told me she nearly left me there, not from hardness, from mercy. She thought I was already dead, and she thought the wolves were what mattered, the living over the lost. Then she said, my hand closed on hers. I have no memory of it. But somewhere below the dark, in whatever deep place a man goes when the cold has all but finished him, some last stubborn thing in me felt her warmth against my throat and reached for it, and my dead fingers found her wrist and held on. That was all. A dying man's grip. But it was enough to tell her I was not a corpse yet, and Sunova had a rule about that too. She got me onto the wooden shovel, half onto it, and she dragged me across the snow to the bothy an arm's length at a time, exactly the way my wolves had dragged me to her, and it took her the better part of the night, and twice she went down and had to lie in the snow herself until she had the strength to rise. The wolves came behind her. They could barely walk, but they came, staggering through her trail one after another, following the man and the woman down out of the storm to the one lit window on the whole black mountain. She got me over the threshold. She got the door barred against the wind. And then, she told me, she looked at what she had brought in, a dying stranger and 9 dying wolves crammed into a stone room the size of a stable stall, and she laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was the most alive her little house had been in 4 lonely winters, and some part of her, she said, had gone up that mountain to die a slow death of being unwanted, and here instead was a night that needed her more than any night had ever needed anyone. So she went to work. I woke to warmth, and the warmth is the thing I will never forget, not if I live to be as old as the beacon itself. I had been cold so long that I had forgotten cold was a thing that could end. It had become the whole of me. I was cold the way a stone is stone. And then, from very far off, I felt heat come back into my body, not all at once, but like a tide coming up a flat shore, creeping into my feet and my hands and the ache of my chest, filling the dead places one after another. I remember thinking, still half in the dark, that this must be what dying finally felt like at the very end, this slow, warm loosening. And then I understood that I was not warmer because I was dying. I was warmer because someone was making me warm. I opened my eyes. There was a fire close and low. There were my wolves, all 9 of them, sprawled and breathing across a stone floor, alive. And there was a woman kneeling over me with her sleeves pushed back, chafing the blood back into my ruined hand between both of her own, her face bent to the work with a frown of pure concentration, and I looked at her, and the last of the cold went out of me all at once, like a tide turning, and something under my ribs that had been asleep my whole life stood up. I have no better way to say it. Other men in this line of country will tell you the mate bond strikes like a blow, like lightning, like a fist. It did not strike me like that. It struck me like heat coming back into a body I had thought was dead, like the first warm thing after an endless cold. My mark, I bear it on the back of my right hand, the pale mark of the iron pine, and it had been cold and dark my whole grown life, because I had never found the one it was made for. My mark woke where her fingers pressed it, and I felt it warm and quicken under her hands, and she felt it too, because she stopped, and stared at the mark she had not noticed before, now faintly gold in the firelight. "You're awake," she said. She had a low, even voice, a voice with the quiet in it that lonely people carry. "Don't try to move. You've been near dead 2 days." 2 days. I tried to speak and my voice came out as a ruin. She gave me water from a horn cup, holding my head patient, and I drank and looked at her over the rim and could not stop looking. She was not a beauty in the way the valley counts beauty. She was thin from a hard winter, plain dressed in mended wool, her hands rough with cold and work. But there was a steadiness in her face that I had not seen in any face at any feast in any hall I had ever sat in. A way of looking at a broken stranger without pity and without fear. Only a level, generous attention, as if she had decided a long time ago that she would meet whatever the world put in front of her without flinching, and had never once broken that promise to herself. I thought, there she is, as if I had been looking for her, as if the whole cold road had only ever been leading here. I did not say it. A man does not say a thing like that to a woman who has just dragged him out of his own grave. She would think the cold had taken his wits. So I said the only other true thing I had. "My wolves." "All living," she said. "2 I wasn't sure of. They're mending. They wouldn't let me near you at first. I had to feed them before they'd let me tend you. They think they own you." "They do," I said, and she almost smiled and did not and turned back to the fire. She did not ask me my name. I have thought about that too, Any other soul, finding a strange man half dead in the snow, would have asked before anything else who he was and where he was from and what he was worth. Sunniva asked me none of it. Later I understood why. In her whole life, being asked who she was had never once led anywhere good. Being named had only ever been the first move in someone deciding what she was worth to them. So she had made herself a person who did not need to know. She fed me and warmed me and asked me nothing, and it was the first time in my life anyone had cared for me without first knowing they were caring for a king. And so, Moon, forgive me or thank me, I am still not sure which, I did not tell her. I told myself it was caution. A lone man in a strange place, his pack scattered, a traitor loose in the valley below who would sleep easier knowing the Alpha King was dead. Better to be no one for a while, better to keep my name close until I knew the ground. That was all true. But it was not the true reason, and I knew it even then. The true reason was that no one had ever looked at me the way she looked at me, like a man and not a crown, and I was greedy for it. I wanted, just for a while, to be only the stranger she had saved. So when she finally asked what she should call me, I gave her the name my mother used before I was ever an alpha of anything. Rick, I said. Rick, she said, testing it, and nodded, and that was that. To her I was Rick, a big broken traveler with too many wolves, and for 11 days it was the truest name I had. I will not pretend I mended quickly. The cold had taken the tips of 2 fingers on my left hand, those I lost, and do not miss. For the first days I could barely cross the little room without the wall to lean on. But Sunniva's bothy was a warm, close, well-kept place, poorer than the meanest room in Vashuld and cleaner than the finest. And under her hands I came back to myself day by day. And as I came back I watched her, and the watching undid me completely. She had almost nothing, and she gave from it without a moment's grudging. When I understood how low her stores were, how carefully she had rationed the salt fish and the hard bread to last her to the spring thaw, 1 small portion a day, no more, and understood that she had begun feeding it to me and to 9 grown wolves without a word, I tried to refuse. I told her I would sooner starve than empty her larder. She looked at me as if I had said something very stupid. You'll eat, she said, because you can't hunt yet and they can't either. She nodded at the wolves. When you can, you'll bring something in and we'll be even. Until then you'll eat, and you'll stop insulting my table by counting it. So I ate, and I burned to repay her. And the day I was strong enough I took the 2 soundest wolves out into the white, and we brought back a winter hare, and then a brace of ptarmigan. And then, when Grail's shoulder had healed enough to run, a young ibex off the high crags, more meat than the little house had seen in a season. I remember carrying it to her door and setting it down, and the look on her face, not greed, not even relief, but a kind of startled softness, as if it had been a very long time since anyone had brought her anything at all. Now we're even, I said. Now we're even, she agreed, and this time she did smile, and I understood I would spend the rest of my life trying to earn that smile again. We fell into the shape of a life, the 2 of us and the wolves, in that small lit room above the storm. In the mornings I split and hauled wood for the beacon, which she had done alone for 4 winters and which nearly killed her each time, and she watched me do in an hour what cost her a day and did not thank me, because we did not thank each other for the ordinary work. That was the whole comfort of it, that the work was simply shared. In the long dark afternoons she mended, and I sat with a wolf's head in my lap and we talked, or did not, and either was good. She told me her life a little at a time, never as a complaint, always as a plain accounting, which somehow made it worse to hear. How her house had put her name in the beacon lot every year, how her aunt had counted her food, how the valley had a word for a woman with no wolf of her own, and how she had heard that word said behind her in every hall she had ever walked into, until she had stopped walking into halls. She told me these things the way you would tell a stranger the history of a house you no longer lived in, and every time she told me one I had to hold very still, because the alpha in me wanted to go down that mountain and put the fear of the moon into every soul who had ever made her small, and the man in me knew that was not what she needed, and that she would not thank me for it. And that a woman who has spent her whole life being decided for does not want a king to come along and decide for her too. So I did the only thing that was mine to do. I listened, and I let her see that I heard her, and I did not once let her think by so much as a look that any of it was true, that she was less, that she was broken, that she was the one anyone should have been able to do without. Because that was the great lie of her life, and I could feel with everything the bond had woken in me how enormous a lie it was. The valley had looked at the most steadfast heart in 100 years and called it the one they would not miss. The valley was full of fools. And she saw me too. That was the thing I had never had. She could not have named me, but she read me clean, the way she read the weather off the mountain. She knew when the memory of the fords sat on me, and on those nights she did not press me, only put more wood on the fire and let me sit with it. When at last I told her the shape of it, a battle, a wall that broke, a man I had trusted who ran and left my flank to die, she did not gasp or flatter or ask what great house I must be to have led men at all. She said only quietly, "So you're the one who lived." And I understood that she had spent her whole life being the one who lived, unwanted, when it might have been easier for everyone if she hadn't, and that she knew exactly the weight of it, and I loved her so much in that moment that I could not speak. The wolves loved her first, and they loved her without my reserve. Wolves do not lie and cannot pretend, and by the second week they had made their choice as clearly as if they had spoken it. They followed her at the heel when she went for water. They lay across her feet in the night. Grail, my war second, the hardest-tempered wolf in the whole Ironpine, a beast who had never in his life sought a hand that was not mine, took to laying his great scarred head in her lap of an evening and closing his eyes, and she would rest her rough hand on him and stroke the fur behind his ears and not even notice she was doing it. And I would sit across the fire and watch the two things I could not do without lean into each other. And no. I knew what the bond had done. I understood it fully by then. My wolves had not sheltered me where I fell. They had hauled me across the whole roof of the mountain, dying themselves, toward the one scent in all the world that could put the warmth back in me. Because a pack knows its alpha's need before he does, and my deepest need, deeper than the cold, deeper even than my life, was her. They had carried me to my mate. They had crawled through the storm to lay their king at her feet, because she was the one thing that could make him whole, and they had known it before I did. It should have made everything simple. It did not. Because every day I did not tell her who I was, the not telling grew heavier, until it sat in the room with us like a 10th wolf no one would look at. She had given me her whole poor world with open hands and asked me for nothing, not even my true name, and I had taken it under a name that was half a lie. And the longer I let it stand, the more it would look, when it broke, like I had been playing at being poor for my own amusement in the house of a woman who had never once in her life had the luxury of pretending to be anything. I made up my mind to tell her. I chose the night, and the mountain, as it always does, chose otherwise. They came on the 11th night, and I heard them before the wolves did, which tells you how far back my strength had come. Not raiders. Raiders would not have climbed the Scarra in deep winter for a lone beacon-keeper's larder. There is nothing up there worth the dying. These were men who had come up the pass on purpose, hunting a particular thing, and there is only one particular thing worth hunting on the Scarra, and that is a rumor. Word travels, even in winter, along the deep valley roads. A woman down at the lower steading, a woodcutter, someone had seen a track, heard a story, a stranger up at the beacon with a great pack of wolves, more wolves than any common traveler has any business with. And certain of the Blackmore, sitting warm in the valley below telling his careful lies about the fords, would have gone very cold indeed at the thought that the man he had left to die might not have died. He did not come himself. Traitors seldom do. He sent 6 of his sworn men up the pass to make certain of the rumor, and to make certain of me if the rumor proved true. I woke Sunniva with a hand over her mouth and my other finger to my lips, and I felt her go from sleep to stillness in an instant. No cry, no startle, a woman long practiced at being quiet and unseen. The wolves were up now, all 9, hackled and silent, ringed toward the door. Men on the pass, I breathed. 6, I think. They've come for me. She did not waste a heartbeat on why. The back shutter, she whispered. There's a gap behind the woodstack into the rocks. You could. No. They'll kill you. They've come for me, I said again. If I run into the rocks in the dark, they burn this house down around you out of spite, and freeze what's left of you on the mountain, and no one ever knows. I will not buy my life with yours. That is not a thing I will do. And there, in the dark, with 6 of my enemy's men climbing the last of the pass toward us, was the moment I could not put off any longer. She had a right to know what she was standing beside before the blades came out. Sunniva, I said, my name is not Rick. She looked at me, and I saw that she already knew it was not, had known for days, and had let me keep my small lie the way she let me keep everything, because she was the most generous soul the moon ever made. My name is Eirik, I said. I am the Alpha King of the Ironpine. Those are my war wolves on your floor. The man who broke the line at the Greywater and left me to die is called Certain of the Blackmoor, and those are his men on your steps, and they have climbed a winter mountain to make sure their master's lie stays true. I am sorry I did not tell you. I have never in my life been glad to be a king until the night you didn't know I was one. I do not know what I expected. Anger, perhaps. She had every right to it. What I got was Sunniva looking at me for a long moment, taking the whole enormous weight of it and setting it down where she set everything level and unafraid. And then she said the thing I will carry to the end of my days. I didn't pull a king out of the snow, she said. I pulled a man who was still alive. I'd have done it either way. Then she reached past me and took the iron poker off the hearth and set her back to mine, facing the shuttered window, ready to stand with me against 6 armed men in the dark. This woman her whole world had thrown away, and I understood that the valley had not merely misjudged her. The valley had, in its blindness, handed the finest Luna a king could hope for to a stone hut on the top of the world, and kept the light burning up there 4 winters, so that, when the Alpha King of the Ironpine was dying, he would have exactly one thing on all the Black Mountain to steer his wolves toward. The door came in on the first blow. I will not make a long song of the fight. I have led men in real war, and I know what battle is, and this was not battle. It was 6 men who had expected to butcher a frozen invalid, and found instead the Alpha King of the Ironpine on his feet with 9 war wolves at his back, and a poker-armed woman guarding his flank the way a mate guards a mate. The first man through the door Grail took to the ground before his eyes could even find me in the firelight. The Ironpine wolves came off that stone floor like the mountain itself standing up, and I want you to know they did not go for me first, though I was their alpha and their charge. They ringed her. 9 wolves, half-healed, put themselves in a wall between Sunniva and the doorway before they did anything else, because she was packed now. She had been packed from the moment she dug the first of them out of the drift, and the pack protects its own. I fought. The strength Sunniva had spent 11 days pouring back into me, spoonful by spoonful of her own winter stores. I spent all of it in the space of a few minutes, and it was enough. A man who has lost the fingertips of one hand can still hold an axe with the other, and I had 11 days of a debt to repay, and the woman I loved at my back, and there is no swordsman in any valley who can stand against that. 2 of Cerdain's men I put down myself. The wolves took 2 more. The last 2, when they saw what they had truly climbed the mountain to find, not a corpse to confirm, but the living Alpha King and a pack that would die before it let him fall. The last 2 ran back into the storm, and the storm is not a thing you run into twice in one night and live. When it was over, I stood in the wreck of that little room, breathing hard, and I turned to find Sunniva, and she was on her feet with the poker still in her hand and one of Cerdin's men on the floor at her feet, and I understood that when the second man had tried to come round the wolf wall at me from the side, this woman, this beacon keeper, had struck him down herself. She had never in her life raised a hand to anyone. She raised it that night for me. I crossed to her and took the poker gently from her hand and set it down, and I took both her cold, rough hands in both of mine, my mark warm and gold against her skin, and I did the thing I had wanted to do since the first moment I woke to her chafing the life back into my dead fingers. I did not command it and I did not claim it. I asked it. "Come down off this mountain," I said, "not as anyone's charity, not as the one they wouldn't miss. Come down as the Luna of the Ironpine, because you are already the finest heart in the whole valley, and I would be a fool of a king to leave you up here keeping a light for lost travelers when you are the only thing I was ever lost looking for. But it is your choice, son of a. It has always been your choice. No one will ever decide a thing for you again, least of all me." She was quiet a long time. Outside the storm was easing. You could hear it changing its voice. The wolves lay down again around us, the fight gone out of them at peace. "I've kept that beacon for years," she said at last, "so that no one would die out there alone in the dark for want of one light to steer by." She looked up at me. "You're telling me the light worked?" "It worked," I said. "It brought me home." And she smiled that smile, the one I had brought her an ibex off the crags to earn, and she said yes. I brought her down off the Scarra when the pass cleared, and I will not pretend the valley knew what to do with what came down. The Alpha King of the Ironpine, believed dead, walking into Vashj'ald alive with his warwolves at his flank and a beacon keeper at his side, it undid more than one carefully told lie. Cerdin of the Blackmoor did not stay to answer for the fords. He had heard by then that 4 of the 6 men he sent up the mountain had not come back, and a man who runs from a battle runs from a reckoning too. He was over the eastern reaches before I could send a single rider after him. I did not chase him. A man like that carries his own winter with him wherever he goes. The last I heard, he keeps no hall and no pack, and steers by no light at all. Suneva's aunt came to court when Suneva was Luna. She came to be gracious, the way people are gracious to a fortune they once threw away, and I watched my Luna receive her with a courtesy so perfect and so cool that the old woman never once found the crack she was feeling for. Suneva did not humble her. She did not need to. She simply stood there in the warm hall she now ruled, dignified and unbroken, exactly as she had stood on the mountain with nothing, and let the difference between what she was and what they had called her speak for itself, which is the only kind of justice that ever really lands. They call her the Luna who came down from the light in Vashj'ald, and there are already songs, and the songs get most of it wrong the way songs do. They make me nobler than I was and her a great secret princess in disguise, which she never was and would laugh to hear. She was only ever what she seemed, a low-born woman with no wolf of her own, whom a whole valley agreed to throw away, who kept a light burning on the top of the world because someone might be out there in the dark. Someone was. It was me. We go back up the Scarra together every winter now, she and I and the grown pups of that old pack, to keep the beacon ourselves for a season, though a king has no earthly need to do it and the whole court thinks us mad for it. We split the wood together. We feed the light. And on the hardest nights, when the storm comes sideways off the mountain the way it did the night it nearly killed me, Suneva goes out and feeds the beacon high, higher than the custom asks, until the flame stands up like a gold banner over all that white nothing. I asked her once why she burns it so high on those nights, when there is no one lost on the pass, no column broken at any ford, no dying king in the drift. "Because there might be," she said. "There's always someone out there, and they should have one true thing to steer by." I did not argue. I only stood beside her in the wind and watched her keep the light, the woman no one wanted, warming the whole Black Mountain, and I thought that the moon in all its wisdom had never done a wiser thing than to send my dying wolves crawling through the storm toward her. The light worked. It brought me home. It brings me home still, every winter, up the pass and back down again, to the only warmth that ever reached all the way into the cold of me, the first heat after the long dark, and the last I will ever need.